There we go. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, so I'm going to, for those who were in the workshop with me yesterday, I have a new identity this morning. So I'm here as the president of Cities. Cities is a center for international transfer for innovations of the social economy. And it groups different territories in different continents, and its objective is to facilitate the transfer of best practices. And I think here we have an exceptional opportunity to hear from different regions and how they're tackling similar issues, but from very specific and different local realities. We're going to start off with a video from the Vice Mayor of Milan, who couldn't join us this morning, and who's going to speak a little bit on how these issues play out in that territory. So we're going to start with that, and then we'll get to the panelists.
Milano ha avviato diversi percorsi per monitorare il contributo della città al raggiungimento di sostenibilità.
The municipality of Milan has started various initiatives to monitor how the city is contributing to SDGs and identify in which contexts sustainable projects and policies can be implemented. And in order to do this, you have to continuously analyze what happens in the city, both under the competence of the municipality and under all the sectors and all private and public entities. The role of the municipality is also that of encouraging public debate and creating the most suitable context in order to promote cultural changes that might turn into habits both for citizens and enterprises. That's why we need to continue collecting and organizing economic, social, environmental data about the city, and all the habits of citizens must also be measured, and we need to have the right indicators to measure how effective public policies in Milan are, so as to organize our policies for the future. Together with the UNDP, Milan is organizing an ad hoc version of the survey in this sector, which is a very important tool, not only for the United Nations, but also for our citizens. Our citizens' commitment is key, so that co-responsibility can actually characterize dialogue with them, because sustainable public policies can be successful, popular, disseminated only if you involve all people. Only if anyone engages, we can substantially contribute to the achievement of the SDGs. There are many areas in which Milan is working. Mobility is one, social inclusion, rehabilitation of abandoned areas, a sustainable food chain. All this can help encourage a circular, sustainable economy. That's why we have promoted certain projects. For instance, the lab against food waste in Via Borsiero. There, a collaboration project takes place between companies having food service and non-profit organizations that distribute such service, thus creating an economy of exchange, which is key for enterprises to fight against hunger and reduce food waste, and also contain the production of waste. This is a project that we promoted together with Dasso Lombarda and the Polytechnic of Milan, thanks to the contribution of the Caribou Foundation and the Food Bank. This is a project that attracts the attention of many people and has many targets in the social sector. It is a PPP. There is work on environmental sustainability to fight against hunger and against waste. Another virtuous example is to be found in the Park Trotter. There, by rehabilitating an abandoned building, many social enterprises are actually implementing projects there, and projects were chosen based upon their job generation factors, because you also need to generate new economies, new jobs, and target number 1 is key in this project. Apart from this, we also have some commercial stakeholders that, apart from goods and services, are offering something different, because the stores that you find in the streets create relationships among people, customers and salespersons, and they enhance safety and security. This is a difficult time. The retail is in a difficult situation because of larger shopping centers. In Milan, we are completely supporting shops in this difficult period. 4 million euros were given as contributions for those companies that were somehow penalized by the new metro area. And we have 4 covered municipal markets. All this actually recognizes the importance of the retail that creates social cohesion. And we also supported historical stores. In our observatory, we saw that the number of stores has increased. Also, in order to improve the life of the neighborhoods, and those entrepreneurs believe that social and business targets can coincide, and we think that if we support those stores, the municipality can certainly contribute to give new job opportunities and increase social cohesion in the various neighborhoods. The municipality of Milan has also started. Unfortunately, the video stopped.
Some details about what Milan is doing with regards to SDG, and as you've heard, they're touching on employment, on protecting small commerces, on integration of people. I think it's very interesting because some of these topics we see in a specific Milan reality, but they're taking place in many other regions of the world. So with that, maybe we'll just introduce the panel first and then look at what all of these territories are doing in some of these respects. So the first person I have is Mr. Franz Beekman. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Strategic Advisor for Fearless City Amsterdam. So do you want to just present yourself? Actually, I think we'll just skip to the detail of sort of what is the reality in Amsterdam, and what's the reality today on the ground, and what is the city doing to address this reality?
The reality today. Well, we're doing a lot. We have a long history in Amsterdam of let's say solidarity, a social economy. But the last 10 years, this changed because of a change of city government. But last year, the most progressive city government was elected. So we now, and they are very ambitious in doing something different. There's a lot to say about that, but I want to highlight two programs that we are now working on. One is the circular economy. It was already mentioned also that they are working on it in Milan. And the other is what we call community wealth building and neighborhood place-based policies. The circular economy is at the moment it's quite ambitious. In 22 neighborhoods, we have 7 districts in Amsterdam, 22 neighborhoods. They should become in the coming 5 years all circular in terms of waste and resource and recycling. But we're also working now with Kate Raworth, who wrote the book The Donut Economy. And she integrates the sustainability targets, let's say the planet, that's the outside of the donut, with social targets and criteria, and it integrates it with economy. So what we want to do is to create a city economy or a neighborhood-based economy that's really transforming the economy. That's a long way to go, because there's still the old neoliberal policies are prevalent also under this progressive city government. That doesn't change in 1 year, probably not even in 5 or 10 years. But we are working in that direction. That means that we want to integrate cooperatives, collective ways of organizing the economy into this circular economy. The other thing is that what I mentioned is the community wealth building. What we try to do is to keep the money inside the neighborhood, also a circular financial flow, so to say. So we're developing methods to trace the money, how much money is being extracted from the economy, from the neighborhood. For example, by big companies that extract the money for their stakeholders, and we try to first to track this money, and secondly to develop other ways of organizing the economy to keep the money in the neighborhood, to invest the money in the neighborhood. And there are many models for that, and we're investigating. We're only starting, so it's very recent, but that's the idea.
Thank you. Very interesting. So we'll get back to some of these cases. Sorry, Yeon-suk, I wanted to clarify, I think on the PowerPoint on stage, it says that you are deputy mayor of, it says Guru, so I think there are many interesting things going on in Seoul, but perhaps not. I wouldn't call you the guru, but you're from the Guru-gu district in Seoul, but you're also vice mayor of the city of Seoul. Yes?
Oh, just
of Guru-gu. Okay, sorry.
I want to be the Seoul vice mayor. It's not easy.
Not today. All right. Nonetheless, there are many interesting things going on in Seoul. So can you speak to us a little bit about what you've been doing and what are the focus in Seoul?
Yeah, my name is Yeon-suk from Guru City, and I would like to some Korean context and Seoul's cases and the Guru initiatives, because we have to understand the Guru's initiatives to know about the Korea and the Seoul, because we are in and we work with the Seoul. In terms of Seoul social economy, Korea, especially Seoul, made policies in 2012. It is the starting time. It is very short history. Might be the prototype of a social economy could be several hundreds years ago. At that time, the whole community needs fulfilled by the community without the central government's aid. But nowadays, the community supporting system and the community economy system wiped out because of the imperialism and the war. Mm-hmm. So after the war, we experienced very rapid growth in economy, and there are big changes in socio-cultural system. We expected this kind of prosperity would not stop until late 90s. With the financial crisis, so-called IMF, but which crisis overwhelmed the Korean economy system. At the time, we retrospect our path of growth, what we were faced. There were big challenges, not only economic recession, but also aging society, economic polarization, and the community breakdown, and so on. The central government raised some policies and set some laws to help people. They can't cope their everyday lives. But nowadays, at the time, we have to think about the social solidarity economy perspectives. So it is needed to supplement the capitalism economy system. So several cooperatives began their business for help the consumer and the producer in agricultural area. And this movement began to early 1980s. Yeah. But in 2012, Seoul City buckled down to the policy for the social solidarity economy, but focused only on the job creation for the vulnerable people. And we have around 5 years before starting the social solidarity economy policy. Nowadays, during that years, Social Solidarity Economy Center and the Social Cooperatives Support Center established as the supporting structure. And we set up the International Cooperation Platform, GSEP, you know. Yeah. The numbers of social enterprises is grown to 5-fold, and the employees who are working in the social enterprises increased. But there are very little numbers of people know and understand the social solidarity economy. Many are think about the social economy is led by the government and just focus on the job creation. For the central government, there are many things to do and set the basic laws for the social solidarity economy. But nowadays, the companies, diverse companies, are under the separate acts and controlled by the separate departments, such as Ministry of Employment and Labor, Ministry of the Public Administration and Security, Ministry of the Planning and Finance. It by categories of their concerning. We need basic laws, but the bill is pending in the parliament for a long time. Even though Seoul reshaped the social economy policies, it was on the job creation and the support the companies, but nowadays they focus on the everyday lives and such as the community cares, housing service, and so on. The new Seoul policies, you can see what they do. Here, yeah. What they are heading for and what they do. Next page, you can see the details about the social solidarity economy policies of Seoul. Yeah, there are many things, but we have not enough time to talk about that. Just to see the slides. Yeah.
So maybe we'll go back in more detail on some of the specific points that you're talking about. But I think what's interesting is you're talking. Sorry. Continue.
Now I'm talking about. I would like to talking about the Guro. Yeah, Guro is working with and in Seoul Metropolitan Government. Guro is in Guro 50, hundreds people are living there. For 50,000 people are living there.
450,000.
Yeah. But small city, but there are so many people are living there, and 5,000 IT-oriented enterprises are located in the Digital Valley clusters, and more or less 5,000 small companies are running their businesses. Guro is one district of the Seoul Metropolitan Government. Therefore, we work with and in the Seoul Metropolitan Government. Every program and every issue Seoul focusing on, it is influenced strongly growth program because Seoul City set the incentive programs to enforce and encourage the district government to cooperate with the Seoul policies. In terms of the social economy programs, Guro is focusing on the job creation for the vulnerable people and on the restoration, the regional economy, regional community, and delivering the social service based on regional community and vitalize the regional economy. From the government view, there are many challenges we have to face, which are strongly related to community needs, such as delivering care services to the people, caring the after-school children, job creation for the vulnerable people, and the social inclusion, energy issues, human issues, food security. Is very similar to the Milan Vice Mayor said, yeah. And all the issues we have to face, but how to realize these things matter, through which way and with whom. There are many rooms for the social enterprise to meet the challenges. So that we make the supporting structures have to people who run the companies to serve the handicapped, the vulnerable, the old, and other people who had some handicapped. We providing the land and the space for the small manufacturer and the space for the startups and organizing the business consulting or marketing support. Many social enterprises run their business for the social value. Some of them employ the people, otherwise they do not have the opportunity to contribute to the community. We accumulate the stories, whether it is successful or not. The social entrepreneurs, social people themselves, in diverse way, show up in festival and organize the open market to make people know what they do, whom they do for, with whom they work. They think there is the better way to expand the awareness of the social and the solidarity economy. Let me pick up a story of them. 3 social enterprises cooperate and collaborate with each other to promote the social value. The companies are small food maker and the educating group user center, which educates school children and the campaign for the improvement social value. Last one is the cooperative who provide space and the programs for the regional art activities. They initiate movements with a wide range from the providing fabric napkin for girls to the cultural diversity issues. They believe that collective thinking, collective wisdom, and the collective activity work better. So they set accelerating programs for the startups and the social entrepreneurs, campaigning for the gender culture, educating job skills for youth in their business, and the direct job creation, in which program employed 11 people last year. And they won the prize from the Seoul Metropolitan Government as the excellent enterprise for job creation. Yeah. We work together in one space. They work together in one space, so they can afford to provide co-working space for the startups and the young entrepreneurs, and they can organize art education and cultural programs in the space. They sometimes visit school and the community to educate people about the diverse social value. Yeah, you can see some next page, and the next page, please. Yeah, it's a gross case. The next page.
Martin, do you want to another one?
Yeah. You can see some pictures of their works. They organize the consulting program and the open market, and the showing up them in the local festival, and the campaigning for the fair trade, and so on and so on. And the next page. And they they provided the space for the startups and the entrepreneurs, and they developed jobs for the developmental delayed people, and the community. They support social entrepreneurs.
So I want to get back in more details about some of these initiatives later with everyone.
Yeah. Okay.
So are we gonna? Can we save some of your information for next round?
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, not because it's not. It's very interesting. I think what's particularly interesting, we see that the social economy emerges in a context of crisis in Korea, and we see that Nguro is going through a sort of transition from to becoming a very tech hub from a rather industrial history, no? And which is sort of similar to something that was going on in Amsterdam about a transition as well in the economic landscape, social and economic landscape. So now we're moving to Tunis and to KEF. What is the reality there, and what are you doing in particular with regards to the social economy? Oui, pardon. Je vais refaire en français, désolé. Donc, chez vous, à KEF, en Tunisie, quelle est la réalité en particulier et qu'est-ce que l'économie sociale, que faites-vous en matière d'économie sociale pour répondre à cette réalité?
Je me présente d'abord.
First of all, I represent the municipality of Kiev in charge of the economic project of my municipality. We have to understand the context of Tunisia first. And we've had a revolution in 2011, and this has brought along changes in society, economy, democracy, especially participatory democracy. And we've had municipal elections. The first time was democratically done. And I think that we've had a very important event, the promulgation of the fact that all public functions in the municipality now have a code of conduct. And so this is regardless of the political trends. So the municipal council now have a law, and this law has two main characteristics. The first is the principle of participatory democracy. So we have no right to do any kind of project without consulting the population first, and otherwise we would be attacked in the court of law. So we want to be able to benefit as much as we can from this participatory democracy. And then, of course, we are focusing on SSE. So this is totally new in our country, this kind of economy. And so we have also an act for strategic development and also to somehow deal with the current challenges, which are basically those of any developing country. So, of course, like I understood all along this economy, most countries find themselves in the same situation. So we have a deficit of the public sector. So the social economy will allow to somehow correct and encourage. And of course, the law states that the local communities must act in the sense of developing this economy, which is of solidarity and socially oriented, giving the priority to this kind of economy for financing and to facilitate the life of people, and so that these sectors can develop themselves. So it is, and then of course the law on a social economy and solidarity economy. So this, we have a project of law, a bill of law, which is ready. But of course, I hope in a few months' time it will become functional and active, because it will be obviously passed, and it is extremely important, obviously. But together with the law on collectives and collectivities, we want to support social and solidarity economy, and this has already been done since quite some time, and this has allowed us to work in this sense. So thank you very much. We're going to grasp more details later on, but it is important to see the comparison between yourselves and Korea, where they're still waiting for the law. And now, back to English.
Oui, et désolé de ne pas vous avoir présenté. You're General Director of the Third Sector and Corporate Social Responsibility of Enterprises at the Italian Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, or Policies. So here we're at a different level of government. What is the reality in Italy in terms of socioeconomic conditions, and how is the social economy a possible solution to contribute to this specific reality?
Grazie.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. I grasp this opportunity to tell you all about the important elements coming from the external context. They're talking about Italy, considering the social and economic profile, and then to understand the legislation framework that we have, and then we can go into greater detail. The reality of social economy in Italy is particularly strong and present all over the national territory. Let me just give you a few figures. We're talking about approximately 330,000 people who work in non-profit organizations throughout the territory in different sectors, for example, health, social assistance, sport, culture, as well as in education and research activities. It is a world that mobilizes approximately 1 million workers between employees and external collaborators, and above all, a world that is capable of mobilizing approximately 5 million people who work voluntarily for these organizations. So this is the general picture. And then, of course, within this general picture, we have different differences. We have social enterprises, social cooperatives, volunteer associations, etc., etc. Now, if you consider this heterogeneous situation, the juridical experience in Italy in the last years has seen a very important reform that obviously came to concretely pass two laws. One is a law on the social enterprise, and the second is the code for the third sector. Now, with the first law, we wanted to potentiate or to strengthen the social enterprise in terms of enlarging the type of activities where a social enterprise can actually operate, as well as how the financing can be more attractive for the private subjects. So the second perspective, that is the code of conduct for the third sector, there we devised an action of creating an organic body of laws and regulations within a framework of a law for different situations or organizations. So in other words, we have the general rules for the organization aspects, the relation between the third sector and public administration, the forms of support to the third sector on behalf of the public, and all the part of the tributary discipline which is specific for these organizations. In other words, this is a very ambitious operation, and the logic underneath all this is very simple: to promote the subjects of social economy, promotion that has to be understood as a creation of normative conditions so that the people working in, or the companies working in the third sector, can independently develop and strengthen their organization capacity, and to have the possibility to better implement their activities which are of general interest, usually. And the second let's say, column of this philosophy, you can grasp it in the relationship between the public subject and the subject of social economy. The third sector are considered, or is considered, as carriers of social interest of the general type. So this is extremely important because they justify the forms of support and that are envisaged by the law, but above all, They want to shed a new light on the relationship between the public administration and the third sector. It is not a subordinate relationship of the first vis-à-vis the others, but it is a completely different way to consider the fact that the third sector companies or cooperatives or whatever have to cooperate with the public power in bringing to life their projects, in other words, in the interests of the general population.
This importance of a collaboration, of a co-ideation of solutions for our territories. And I think this brings me back to the case of Amsterdam, where you're really going back on a local level to enable different territories, different communities to find their own solutions, to generate their own development. This panel this morning is about also the Sustainable Development Goals, and specifically the future of work and the question of the SDG 8 on employment and decent work and economic growth. What are the issues specifically in your territories with this regards, and what are you doing in particular with the social economy to answer that? Do you want to? I don't know. Yeah. Let's start with you.
I will show you a story of the foundation of the social service authority that employed the people who were employed in the informal market, and without the sometimes they work without the employed, so it's a self-employee. But now the social service social service authority employ the people and take some deliver the social services to the people, and in that way, so make the informal work or the not good work make decent work, decent labor, a decent job, and the sustainable job, and they improve the labor condition and also improve the quality of service. It's the way of the set of goals of SDG goals. Yeah.
So
it's
helping to formalize workers in an informal sector, and by that improving their working conditions.
Yeah. That kinds of work, not terms of the social solidarity economy, we started at 2012 to the formalizing the labor market. But nowadays, the government sector didn't employ the informal types, all the contract with for social insurance and other social security. Mm-hmm. It's the way, and we help the social enterprise and the social cooperatives to encourage to employ the people with the
to integrate new people into the market.
Securities, insurance, and good conditions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. What are the conditions? How do you see the social economy as answering questions of decent work and economic growth that'll reach a broader audience in Amsterdam?
Well, the general aim, I mean, the target, that's the SDGs that are, all the SDGs are, of course, the targets that we aim for in Amsterdam, but they're very general. I've worked for 15 years in the international development and have covered all the negotiations about the MDGs and the SDGs, and I finally chose to go to the city level because it's too general for me, and I think that it depends of the way you try to implement these targets, the way you try to reach these targets, and that's another discussion. So yes, it's very related, but the way we aim to do it is more of a transformation of the economy, and less of just the social targets. Of course, they are included, but the way to do it is to transform the economy, and that's a long way.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. When the link between economic development, the way that we develop economically, and then the impact on all the other social measures that we can have. What would you say then are the general challenges in terms of currently the economic landscape and the socioeconomic landscape in Amsterdam? Because you spoke a little bit about the initiatives that you're doing, but the broader context in which it's taking place and what you specifically want to answer with this?
Well, you saw the pictures, that was a part of my PowerPoint, and it was more of a historic overview of what happened in Amsterdam. And we came, what we did in Amsterdam there was a very, very, very strong bottom-up movement, which included all kinds of social and solidarity economy in the 70s and 80s, which had other names, but it was similar. That was destroyed. And then an alternative was set up, what we called breeding places. It was big buildings where we put artists, cultural activities, etc., creative people, and gave them an opportunity to start up in a way, which worked well. And then what happened is that they were the kind of avant-garde for commercial companies. So the whole concept of Richard Florida, the city concept of creating a creative class, which attracts investors. It worked very, very well in Amsterdam, but now we are seeing the downside of it. That we have too many tourists. There are millions and millions of tourists. The whole city is overflown. There's huge segregation. So part of the people are very rich, and they are mainly expats and the upper classes of Amsterdam, and a big part is being pushed out. So segregation is happening outside of the center. So we have a very rich city and a very segregated city at the same time, which was a double. I mean, it was a success, and at the same time we now see we have to develop new strategies to counter this, and that's mainly focusing on the outer side, which is 40, 50, 60% of the inhabitants of Amsterdam. They are mainly people from foreign descent, people from Morocco, people from Turkey mainly. That's the biggest part, but there are 180 nationalities in Amsterdam, and they live outside. They are the poorest. And so there we have to create another kind of economy, which is not the formal mainstream economy attracting investors, etc., which works, but which has this counterproductive consequences. And that's where we don't call it social solidarity economy, we call it cooperative economy, or democratization of the economy. So the participation part that you mentioned is also very important in our case. We want to we're talking about remunicipalization of many of the sectors that have been privatized and outsourced in the past 20, 30 years all over Europe, but also in Amsterdam. We try to get it back, but not in the, let's say, the municipal bureaucracy, the government, but in the hands of the people. We try to organize collective ways of governing, cooperative economy, cooperatives, but on a larger level, so not only on a business level. And that's assembly kind of ways of organizing, of governance, and we're experimenting with that now. So how to get back the services, the healthcare, from the commercials' hands into the people's hands. That's the idea, and we call that democratization of the economy.
Thank you. Very interesting. Donc, je vais passer.
So, Mr. Raleigh, we have mentioned the importance of having a dialogue with the communities, but also a dialogue based on the community, for the communities, that can attract investments from abroad. So could you tell us something more about the initiatives in order to favor this kind of development, and maybe which are the goals, the objectives, for example, more decent work or decent work altogether and more jobs? Well, of course, we have a problem to attract investors, and national and international. The characteristics of Tunisia is that we have the coast area on the Mediterranean with all sorts of infrastructures. They have mass tourism, we have hotels, we have industry, etc. And of course, all the investments are done there where you have all of this economy which is already running. We've had very negative experience, for example, a German plant that was producing equipment for cars. They wanted to come and invest in our area, and then they decided to leave, and they went to put their plant on the coast. So, and it was one of the 3 plants we had in the region, and unfortunately they closed it down and decided to relocate it on the coast. So that was a very negative experience. And then we have a textile industry, and they engaged themselves. It's a Tunisian industry, but he decided to file for bankruptcy because, and we haven't really understood the reason why, but obviously there was something not really very clear. But anyway, so our region is not very fortunate if you want to look at the economics of the region or the financial situation. But as a local community, what we really want is to invest in our region. So we do lobbying for our region, but also we try to help the local entrepreneurs to develop certain enterprises, for example, in the sector of social and solidarity economy. I don't know whether I'm going to talk right now about a few examples, but we have some slides. I have some slides that I could show you, just to give you an idea of what we can imagine in the short term could be our future, and which are the projects that we consider viable. So first of all, here I've put a photograph of the citadel, the Kasbah. It is an historical monument which is very, very ancient, the 6th, 7th century Anno Domini, and which has been classified World Heritage. So this is very for alternative kind of tourism, people interested in archaeology, and this citadel contains within itself things that can be reused in order to show the projects with an association of women, artisans or craftsmen, and we have given them the space so they can show their products and they can sell their products in the citadel. And okay, so I don't know if you could show the other pictures, please. So this is a general view of our city. And if you see, there is a park in the foreground, and this represents the green lung of the city. And it is not very used, unfortunately. What we are thinking about for this park is to make it available for young teenagers for sports and cultural activities. So we're going to fix it. It's obviously a municipal park. We're going to create all sorts of sports infrastructures, and we're going to plant all of the local plants, like sort of turning it into a botanical also garden, and this is in the short term. The third photograph is the photograph of a nursery or kindergarten. So, and we've had it since 20 years. With the Ministry of Family, Childhood and the Elderly, we have managed to have the necessary funds in order to refurbish it. So So we have also the help of the local association of parodontics, and they have helped us, and also for the German Cooperative Institute that has actually helped us to build a center for autistic children, and they're going to take care of these autistic children, and also a park for parents who also suffer as much as their children do due to their autism. And so this is going to be used for the autistic children and for other children, also because this is a very popular borough in our city. We also have the kindergarten right next to this building, and so the price is very, very low, so that all children from this area, which is a poor area, can benefit from this kindergarten and a creche. Let me try in Italian, says the lady. Many people mentioned the relationship between the municipal government and the national government policies that somehow facilitate or make it more difficult to have local measures. So how do you see this? We know that in Italy the cities are strong, the situation is different. How can such diverse entities such as the national government, the municipal government, and the social society cooperate? So what do they have to say? How do they engage themselves in order to promote projects? Well, this is a very central issue, I would say, and in the Italian reality, it is particularly felt in the sense that when we talk about social services, this is concretely developed and declined at local level, at regional level, and also at the municipal level. One of the approaches that has been followed, and that I would like to mention, is the experience that we have developed in 2018, starting from last year. The Italian government has created set up a planning of the resources that are meant for third sector entities along two axes. The first is to connect with the finalities of the actions that have to be financed with the goal of sustainable development. So the Ministry of Public Works and Social Policy has told us that in 2018 there would be resources available to develop activities of the general type, but they have to reach the goals of sustainable development. So this is extremely important because I think it is one of the first programming activities that obviously mentions sustainable development, and these are obviously meant for the third sector, starting from the fact that all of these activities of the third sector is that of reaching the goals of the 2030 agenda, the sustainable development goals. But it is even more important if you think of the cultural process that it is triggering, especially on behalf of the public administrators who have to orient their activities also in bearing in mind the 2030 agenda, for example, which goes beyond the national plan. So this cultural process starts to become very strong in the Italian reality because there is not just one kind of administration, in our case the Ministry of Labour, that has given a very clear directive, but there also are the control bodies, for example, the Court of Accounting, which checks all the accounts. But basically, it is is a control on the action and management of the state administration for 2019, and it has highlighted this aspect. In other words, please pay attention, because I'm going to check how you manage things. I'm going to check the efficacy of the administrative action, not just the financial aspect, but also in relationship to the capacity and the coherence and the efficacy of the activity vis-à-vis the Sustainable Development Goals. So, this is a new way of thinking, and this is what the future entails. And then the second point, the interrelationship between the national level and the local level. We have developed this action in the logic of close cooperation with the regional level. We have foreseen how, together with the support of the actions of national level, but there is the need to support the local level, since these are definitely far closer to those who will benefit from these actions and the projects, bearing in mind the characteristics of the single territories. And we have done it with the different types of agreements that have been reached with every single region of Italy. They can benefit from these resources, but they will have to develop the local projects. And at local level, this is even more important, we have the tools through which we can implement all of these actions. Because the Code of Conduct for the third sector introduces new elements and new possibilities of satisfying the community's needs, which are not just linked to a logic that we may define as only concerning the public bid and winning the bid and doing these services for the public, but that defines and crystallizes other tools which are not competitive but cooperative tools. In other words, the relationship between the public administration and the third sector stakeholders, and starting from this position of equality that I mentioned before, are called to supply their help in the co-programming phase. So the high identification of the territory's requirements that have to be met and satisfied, and also the identification of the resources which are possibly available, coming from either public or private sources, and then the co-design or co-design phase, and for the actions that want to satisfy the needs of the territories. So then, of course, if you need further detail, we can mention them later on, talking about, obviously, the local projects that we have in the pipeline.
From the audience, and I'm going to put them together also because I can't open this iPad anymore. A lot of the questions were about this collaboration. All of you have spoken about this role of seeing the community or social solidarity economy actors as partners, and collaborating with them to identify orientations or develop projects. And so the questions were around what does this collaboration look like concretely? Because you've all spoken about specific projects, but how does this articulate? And do you see any resistance from other groups, from private sector, for example, or other levels of government? So I don't know who wants to start on that question. Should we start again from is that annoying to be the first one who starts? Okay. Est-ce que, Monsieur Rally?
Mr. Riley, would you like to explain how all this is organized in your case? You've talked about innovative projects, but how are those projects selected, and what is the tangible organization with the third sectors when it comes to those municipal projects, and where are the difficulties? Well, these projects meet the needs expressed by our population. We have municipal councils or where the population can actually express those needs, or they can express those needs through associations. And the municipal councils are in close contact with the local population in the various neighborhoods, but we needed some innovation. And we needed to understand that the state cannot do everything. We understand what the situation is in Tunisia, and we really needed to encourage the citizens' participation in solving their own problems. We are facilitators. This is our role. The relationship with the state today is a little bit ambivalent because the current governor has not been elected so far, but it will be elected because it's a participatory democracy, and we are starting to expand it at the various levels, local, regional, etc. We do not have a clear relationship so far, but there is no resistance either. When you go towards the right direction, I think that it is very difficult not to be followed. And then we're supported by our citizens, by associations, the various associations with which we work, and also the associations that we fund, who are entitled to finance them. There are some plans, and with regard to the 3 projects that I've mentioned, I think that they can be implemented. And when it comes to the park, this is a different program that was promoted by the government, and we have just stepped in later on. The park is owned by the municipality. It will be managed by the state, and will benefit, or rather will enable young diploma holders to benefit from this initiative. So actually, we step in a program that was initiated by the government. But you are the ones who invited civil society representatives to come and submit projects, or you actually followed their suggestions? Well, I mentioned the local community code, and it gives a lot of rights for associations at a local level. So they need to be involved in all our initiatives. So there has been idea sharing, and some ideas have stemmed from the municipal council. But they have emerged in response to real needs in our region. These projects can be approved very easily thanks to the law that we have. Even if there are resistances at the municipal level, a simple majority is enough to carry those projects.
This collaboration work, how specifically can you speak? You talked about work to promote the social economy. You talked also about specific projects. How does this work concretely, of this partnership with the social economy actors, and is there resistance sometimes?
Yeah. We tried to the community engagement, and sometimes we gathered the entrepreneurs and ordinary people to cultivate the initiatives and some support the initiatives or the entrepreneurs. And sometimes we invite the social economy, the social entrepreneurs, to get the programs we provide, the local government provide. And the metropolitan government support general policies with general policies, and the central government also. But we have to talk that kind of things. To do that kind of things, we have to build the good governance to solve the community's problems, like I've said before. So there are good partnerships between the community and local government, and we always cultivate the programs and the initiatives the community needs, and from the round table talking, and we get many ideas and their needs. So we do things with the community members and the social entrepreneurs and so on.
So you have recurring discussions with actors in the community, both about what the needs are, but also about what solutions could be put into place?
Yes, also, exactly, yeah.
Okay. What does that look like in Amsterdam, this collaboration? And you were talking about the difference between really localizing some of these conversations.
Yeah, we have a long history in Amsterdam of what we call participation and co-creation, and people get a bit tired to participate. There are even participation strikes going on, and that's the consequence of being it not a real equal relationship. Co-creation would you would think it's equal, the two of us, but the municipality is much more powerful. They have much more time because people are working there, and the other side is not is doing it in their spare time. And so it's only the professionals, kind of the third sector professionals, who are able to communicate with the municipality, and that's a problem. That's not equal. The municipality has the money, so they can decide whom to work with, and that's so we try to change that. And now we're talking not about participation or co-creation anymore, but about ownership. Give the ownership to the people and give it to the people that are not that good in reaching the municipality, which are the groups that we are aiming for. I was talking about this segregation, about those people who are living outside of what we call the ring, the center of Amsterdam, the poorer people, most foreign people who don't know the language, don't know the Dutch language, but they don't know the institutional language to get to the municipalities, to the municipality. How to reach those people, how to involve those people. That's what we are aiming for, and it's a difficult one because they have their own culture, so to say, which is not so much focusing on the institutions of the municipality. Two things that we are experimenting now with. One is what we call neighborhood budgeting. It's similar to participatory budgeting, but the experiment is that we just give amount of money to the neighborhood. And they have to decide their own process, democratic process. They have to prove that it's democratic, that they involve all the people from the neighborhood to plan how to spend this money in the coming year. And we are monitoring that and do it in several ways, sometimes online, but also offline, just with the people, with the communities in the neighborhoods. The other instrument that we are experimenting with is the right to challenge, which is a kind of law that gives communities, the third sector, non-profit organizations, the right to challenge the municipality. We can do this service better than you do. They have to prove it. There's one the first one now is about eradication of rats. You know, the big mice, and there's a neighborhood which has a lot of problem with rats, and the municipality is not able to handle that. They gave it to a commercial company. They cannot eradicate the rats. So there are groups in the neighborhood now. They say that we are going to do this. Give us the money. For half a year we're gonna work on it. If we don't make it, we give half of the money back because they pay some people for that. And they are working on it now. It seems to work better than when it was given to this commercial company. That's one example. So, and now there are many groups are preparing to this right to challenge.
And on this issue, it was the community that came to you and said, on this problem, we think we can work better, rather than you invited someone to say, how would you manage this problem?
They identify this as a problem. They say we can do it better. It's also the parks, the maintenance of the parks. There are those kind of things, but that's easier. But also more, well, it's maybe, I don't know if it's difficult, eradicating rats, but it seems specific at least.
And how do you distinguish that from a whole tendency of just privatizing public services? Like in many places, it would be a private. The argument is the private sector or what a private company can do better or is more efficient. How do you distinguish between a community initiative and a private enterprise?
This is supposed to be more rooted, because there are some rules for this right to challenge. So it should be rooted in the community, in the neighborhood. It should be neighborhood based. It should be non-profit. It should be. There are some democratic rules related to it, and all the money should stay inside the neighborhood, the community. So not being what I mentioned before, being extracted.
Very interesting. Thank you. Parole della fine. Stavamo parlando più a livello qui di comunità locali.
We are talking about local communities.
Come può una istanza nazionale
So how can a national entity facilitate this partnership, as a partner rather?
Sì, è possibile
This is possible if you create the right legislative tools through which you can implement dialogue, cooperation and involvement of third sector entities at a local level.
Io mi vorrei ricollegare ad un'affermazione
I would like to
interessante, che ho trovato molto importante da parte del consigliere Ralli.
linked to something that was said by Mr. Raleigh. He said the state level cannot do everything. Let's start with this assumption. However, I think that we should further reinforce this assumption with another one. Not only public powers cannot do everything, the public sector cannot do anything, but the public authority is not the only entity which is the interpreter and the detector of the needs of the people, of the local needs. If we start from these assumptions, we can draw some important distinctions. If I actually believe that the monopoly of knowledge and of the detection of the right tools is focused on the public administration, my method to try and meet the community needs can only be one. It is a single one. I need to carry out an outsourcing process by having a tender and by resorting to for-profit enterprises. I'm the one who's in charge of the rules. I'm the one who can determine the activities that I'm requesting, the tools that I want to be used, whereas bidders can only determine the price. This is all that bidders can do. On the other hand, if we start from the assumption according to which the public authority is not the only one which can interpret the problems, but if we consider that detecting needs is something that should be done in collaboration with the third sectors, that is, the representatives of general stakeholders, different processes are possible because you can actually implement all those different and additional forms that there are to meet the community needs. And we mentioned them before, that is co-programming and co-management of projects. In this case, we do not have a set of specifications that has been determined by the public administration, whereas bidders only have very little margin for maneuver. But you have a situation in which the public administration has just set up a general template with the resources that they're going to contribute with, but other organizations can actually complete this project with their own ideas, human or financial resources. If this is the case, you have a larger administrative and regulatory autonomy at a local level when it comes to organizing these procedures. And I would like to highlight three aspects. As Bigman also said, everything has to be included in a very clear regulatory framework. These activities are to be integrated into administrative process where certain rules are complied with, such as level playing field and transparency, for instance. And then various subjects, various actors will be selected and will collaborate in the activity. The fact of having various actors means that you'll have a better quality, a better result, because the result will no longer be the choice of a unilateral decision. The second remark that I would like to share is on the effects of this type of approach. We said that there is certainly a multiplication of resources here, because you don't have simply the provision that is put at the disposal of people by the public administration and that is then allocated to the winning bidders, but you can also have private contributions and not only public contributions. And thanks to non-profit contribution, we can also develop innovative actions, or you can actually use different and innovative ways to meet the needs that exist. You can also favor aggregation of subjects. Collaborations. And I would like to add a further effect, that is the creation of a network and establishment of trust among the various organizations in the non-profit sector that are located there, and between them and the community, as well as between the various organizations and the public administration. My last remark, and I would like to link back to the initial question. Are there resistances? That was the question. Are there resistances by for-profit companies? Well, first of all, do consider that many of these services are not considered to be profitable, and for-profit organizations are not interested. Whereas in other cases, there are projects that might be profitable. Here again, a cultural transformation is necessary, so that at all levels, starting from the public sector and the public authorities, so that you can actually overcome the limitations of a purely commercial vision, according to which you provide a service for profit. So we have to overcome this type of approach and have a different one that is open to accepting different ways, different manners to ensure the services that are necessary. And today there are many challenges that need to be faced by a series of players and not just by one in isolation. For instance, aging of the population, as our colleague from Guru was saying. At a local level, we might have a system of caring services for people, the elderly, the vulnerable, the children, and we can imagine what results we can have if we apply a competitive logic based on tender or a partnership-related logic in which you can actually create networks among various stakeholders who, on the one hand, will be able to improve the quality of the service provided, but then also there will be the possibility for citizens to concretely, freely opt and select where to get the service from.
Thank you. I would have many other questions or comments, but I'm looking at the time, so I think this will conclude the panel. It's interesting for me, we were talking about SDGs and we didn't refer to them always explicitly, but I think all this talk about really looking at the local level, enabling communities to identify their own challenges and to find their own resources to address them is really in line with this idea of localizing these basic rights and basic developments. So thank you very much for this panel.